In the 1920s, a French inventor named Justin Christophe walked into a patent office with a device that should have changed agriculture forever. He wasn't a magician. He was a practical man who had observed something profound about the natural world. He discovered that by placing simple copper and zinc antennas in his garden, positioned to align with the Earth's magnetic fields, he could harvest crops of unbelievable size and health without using a single ounce of fertilizer. We are talking about cabbage leaves spanning feet across and crops that were virtually immune to pests. Christoph wasn't guessing. He understood that plants don't just eat chemical nutrients, they feed on atmospheric electricity. He successfully patented his electroculture apparatus. And for a moment, it looked like the future of farming would be free, abundant, and self-sustaining. But you don't hear about Justin Christoph today. You hear about nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Why? Because just as his methods were gaining traction, the industrial chemical industry was born. There is no profit in a farmer who can energize his soil with a single copper wire that lasts for decades. There is endless profit, however, in a farmer who must return to the store every spring to buy bags of fertilizer. This knowledge wasn't disproven, it was buried. It was traded for a system that keeps you dependent on the store. But the physics hasn't changed. The energy Christoph tapped into is still there, right above your garden, waiting for you to turn the switch back on. To understand why Justin Christoph's discovery was so revolutionary, you have to look at your garden differently than you have been taught. The modern agricultural model treats the soil like a bank account. You are told that if you want to withdraw a tomato, you must first deposit nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. If the plant looks weak, the expert at the garden center tells you your account is empty and you need to buy more deposits. This is the chemical model. It assumes the soil is dead and passive, a simple container that holds ingredients. But this model is flawed because it ignores the engine that actually drives growth. Think about a forest. No one fertilizes the redwoods. No one balances the pH of the Amazon rainforest. Yet these systems produce more biomass per square inch than your best-tasting tomato plant, and they do it forever. They succeed because they are plugged into a larger energy system. The Earth itself is a giant negative terminal, and the ionosphere above us is a massive positive terminal. Every tree, every blade of grass, and every vegetable plant is essentially a biological wire connecting these two poles. The sap in the plant isn't just water, it is an electrolyte moving nutrients upward, not just by capillary action, but by electrical attraction. The reason your garden struggles despite your hard work is that modern gardening often breaks this circuit. We put down plastic weed barriers that insulate the soil. We use raised beds filled with sterile potting mixes that have no magnetic resonance with the ground below. We pour on synthetic fertilizers, which are essentially salts. While they give a quick chemical burst, they can actually disrupt the natural electrical conductivity of the microscopic life in the soil. When you do these things, you are trying to run a machine with a power cord cut. You can pile all the fuel you want into the tank, but if there is no spark, the engine won't turn over. Christoph understood that we don't need to force the plant to eat. We need to stimulate its appetite. When you restore the electrical flow between the atmosphere and the earth, you wake up the soil biology. The bacteria and fungi that process our nutrients are sensitive to these weak electrical currents. When the current flows, they work harder. They break down minerals that are already in your soil but were previously locked away, inaccessible to the roots. Suddenly, you don't need to add more fertilizer because the plant can finally access what was there all along. We are not adding chemicals to the equation. We are simply restoring the physics that allows nature to feed itself. To visualize how this system works, I want you to imagine the world around you as a giant battery. Above your head, the ionosphere, the sky, is positively charged. Beneath your boots, the earth is negatively charged. Every second of every day, there is a natural desire for these two energies to connect and balance out. In a healthy wild ecosystem, trees and tall native grasses act as the conductors that bridge this gap. They pull the atmospheric energy down into the root zone, creating a subtle electrical vibration that the soil life depends on. The problem in our modern gardens is that our vegetables are often too small, too isolated, or growing in soil that has become electrically resistant to do this job effectively. This is where the copper antenna comes in. It acts as a surrogate tree. By installing a simple copper wire that reaches up into the air and runs deep into the ground, you are manually closing that circuit. You are creating a low-resistance path for the atmospheric potential to flow directly into the root zone of your plants. This is not about shocking your vegetables. We are talking about millivolts, a tiny imperceptible trickle charge. But to a microbe, that trickle is a wake-up call. When this weak current hits the soil, it acts as a catalyst. It stimulates the bacteria responsible for nitrogen fixation, essentially telling them to get to work. It increases the solubility of minerals, dissolving the hard nutrients in the soil so the plant can actually drink them. Think of it like a magnetic field. When you run a current through a wire, it creates a magnetic field around it in your garden bed. This field influences the movement of sap, which is rich in iron and other minerals. It improves the plant's circulation. The plant doesn't have to work as hard to pump nutrients against gravity because the magnetic pull is assisting the flow. You are essentially taking the burden off the plant's internal struggle, allowing it to spend its energy on fruit and leaf production instead of just survival. This is the Christoph flow effect, using the free energy of the sky to unlock the sleeping energy of the earth. Now let's build this. The beauty of this system is that you do not need a machine shop or a degree in engineering. You likely have most of what you need in your garage right now, or you can find it at the local hardware store for a few dollars. We are going to build a basic atmospheric antenna that mimics the design principles Justin used. You need two things: a wooden stake and a length of pure copper wire. Start with the wood. You want a piece of untreated lumber, like a cedar stake, or a simple round dowel about 6 feet tall. Do not use metal or plastic for the support stake. We want the wood to act as a neutral spine that holds the wire. Next, you need the conductor. You want pure copper wire. It does not need to be thick industrial cable. Standard 14 gauge or 12 gauge solid copper wire works perfectly. If you have old electrical wiring lying around, strip off the colored plastic insulation. The copper needs to be naked to interact with the air and the soil. Take your wooden stake and start at the bottom. Leave a tail of wire about 6 to 8 inches long hanging off the bottom end. This is the part that will go deep into the earth. Now begin winding the wire up the stick. You aren't just wrapping it randomly. You want to create a spiral, much like a vine climbing a tree. If you live in the northern hemisphere, wind it clockwise, the same direction the sun moves across the sky. This spiral shape is important because it acts as a vortex, helping to channel the energy effectively. The spacing doesn't need to be perfect, but aim for a nice, even flow, leaving a few inches between each loop. When you reach the top of the stake, you want to create the receiver. Extend the wire above the wood and bend it to point upwards toward the sky. Some people like to twist it into a small cone or a simple straight point. Both work, but the key is that the copper tip is the highest point in that garden bed, unobstructed and reaching into the open air. To install it, simply drive the stake into the soil on the north side of your garden bed. You want that 6-inch tail of copper at the bottom to be fully submerged in the dirt, sitting right near the root zone of your plants. That is your connection point. The top gathers the potential from the atmosphere. The spiral accelerates the flow, and the tail grounds it into the earth, completing the circuit. Once it is in the ground, your work is done. There are no batteries to change, no switches to flip, and no moving parts to break. You have just installed a permanent energy source for your garden. Once you have driven that stake into the ground, I want you to be patient. We are so used to the instant gratification of chemical fertilizers, where you spray a blue liquid and see a perk up the next day, that we have forgotten what real foundational health looks like. This system works on the timeline of nature, not the timeline of a marketing department. So let me walk you through what the next few months will actually look like so you don't lose faith in the quiet weeks. For the first 2 or 3 weeks, you might not see much of anything happening above the soil. Do not be discouraged. The work is happening underground. The electrical potential is slowly reorganizing the microscopic life around the roots. The roots are sensing that new vibration and are beginning to stretch toward it, thickening their cell walls and healing from transplant shock much faster than usual. You are building the foundation of a house. Just because you can't see the walls yet doesn't mean the concrete isn't curing. By the end of the first month, you will notice the first real shift. It won't be size yet, it will be color. You will look at your copper-charged bed and then at your standard bed, and you will see a difference in the green. The plants near the antenna will develop a deeper, richer, almost waxy darkness to their leaves. This is chlorophyll production kicking into high gear. The plant is becoming more efficient at photosynthesis because it has the mineral density to support it. The stems will feel different too. If you gently pinch the stalk of a pepper plant in this bed, it will feel firm and woody, not watery and soft. It is building a skeleton that can actually hold the weight of the fruit to come. By month 3 in the heat of summer is when the real separation happens. This is usually when the bugs arrive. You might look over at your neighbor's garden and see their squash leaves covered in beetles or their tomatoes wilting under the midday sun. But when you walk back to your electrified bed, you will notice a strange quietness. The leaves are intact. The plants are standing upright, ignoring the heat. This is because the sap sugar content, the Brix level, has risen so high that the plant has become unpalatable to pests. Insects are nature's garbage collectors. They attack weak, sickly plants. They do not know what to do with a plant that is vibrating with high-voltage health. You aren't fighting the bugs. You have simply grown a plant that is too healthy to be a victim. Reliability is the only metric that truly matters to a homesteader. We are not growing giant pumpkins for the county fair. We are growing food to put on the dinner table every single night. The true test of this system isn't how it performs on a perfect spring day, but how it holds up when the weather turns against you. This is where the copper antenna proves its worth, not just as a growth booster, but as an insurance policy. When the midsummer drought hits and the ground starts to crack, the chemical garden is the first to suffer. Those plants have shallow roots because they have been spoon-fed surface nutrients their whole lives. But the plants in your electrified bed have been driven by a different signal. Because the electrical potential encourages depth, their root systems have punched down into the subsoil, tapping into moisture reserves that the surface heat cannot touch. You will find yourself watering less. The soil structure itself, influenced by that magnetic alignment, holds water more efficiently. It becomes a sponge rather than a sieve. As the season pushes into autumn, you will see the concept of season bridging come into play. Usually, as the days get shorter and the light fades, plants shut down. They sense the drop in energy, but the antenna continues to pull atmospheric potential into the soil. Even as the sun weakens, this keeps the soil microbiome active longer than usual. I have seen tomatoes in these beds continue to ripen fruit 2 or 3 weeks past the typical frost date of the unprotected beds nearby. You aren't forcing nature. You are simply giving the plant a slightly warmer coat to wear against the coming winter. And then there is the taste. This is the invisible yield. When a plant has high electrical conductivity, it packs more minerals into the fruit. This raises the sugar content or Brix level. A high Brix carrot doesn't just taste sweeter, it is chemically denser. It doesn't rot as fast in the root cellar. It freezes better. It feeds your family more deeply. You stop chasing quantity, the number of bushels, and you start valuing the quality of the calorie. You realize that a smaller harvest of nutrient-dense, electrically grown food is worth 10 times the volume of the watery, chemical-filled produce you used to grow. You have built a system that prioritizes stability over speed. And in a chaotic world, stability is everything. If this story changes the way you look at the energy flowing through your own backyard, please subscribe and like the channel. We are unearthing the history they tried to bury. Plant the future. The next treasure will be revealed soon.